Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Saturn entering the sign of Aries for all 12 whole sign horoscopes. Before we get into those horoscopes, I am also going to give you a particular way of looking at Saturn in Aries. Let's call it an evolutionary perspective, but we're going to dive into that word evolution today and take a look at its etymological roots and history, because sometimes I think we hear that word and we make a lot of assumptions, or we've heard it so many times that it may not sink in at the level that's really useful. So we'll explore what we mean by evolution spiritually, psychologically. We'll talk about how Saturn in Aries may play a role in the evolution of the soul, and then we'll look at horoscopes today after I give you some prompts to consider from an evolutionary perspective. That's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. I really want people who consider astrology a part of their spiritual lifestyle and practice to consider this a part of your daily spiritual practice. That this channel would be a safe spiritual place to utilize astrology as you learn and grow throughout this lifetime. That's the goal of this channel. If you find yourself using this channel for that purpose, please consider subscribing, because it helps us grow tremendously. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. There are a few events coming up, most of which are free, that I want to tell you about. If you go to the events page, click on in-person events. We're holding a solstice gathering on Saturday, June 21st here in Minneapolis at the Grapevine Collective, which is at the New City Center. It's free. Just RSVP and let us know you're coming so we can bring enough treats. Can't wait to do that. That's going to be fun. If you go to speaker series, you'll see that our summer speaker series is coming up in June. Those talks are also free. You just have to register to get a link to attend. And then when you do that, you also get the replay if you can't make it live. These are going to be great talks from some homegrown astrologers that have come through Nightlight and others who are friends or colleagues of mine. So always good talks to add to your collection there. Finally, if you go to live talks, you'll see that my June webinar is on Uranus in Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius. This is a huge transit that I am taking some extra in-depth time to look at through my June webinar. You can register for that. If you can't attend live, you get the replay. So beyond that, of course, we are in registration mode for our first year course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, which begins on June 22nd. You can learn more about it on the first year course page. At the bottom, you'll find registration options. After the end of today's talk, there is an informational video tagged on. We do this for the month or two leading up to enrollment, so that if you want to learn more about what the program includes, you got that info right there. You can dive in and listen to me tell you everything the program is about and take you to the course page and stuff like that. You'll find that there are payment plans, and there's also need-based tuition assistance. So if you're someone who wants to take the course, but you need a little help because you're on a fixed or limited income, we understand. We don't want people going outside of their means to study something sacred. We think it should be an investment, but we understand that that's going to look a little bit different for different folks. So please do use that. It's part of our mission to remain financially accessible for people who want to come study with us. On that note, let us now turn our attention to the real-time clock. Yesterday, we took a look at Saturn in Aries, and I think that it was a pretty good discussion of Saturn in Aries that allowed us to think about what it means when Saturn goes to the Airbnb of Aries. What kind of things does Saturn order? And then how do the hosts, in the case of Aries, that's the Sun and Mars, provide for the guest, Saturn? And that exercise is one that as I was mentioning yesterday, you can utilize for any kind of planetary delineation when a planet is traveling through any sign, especially those that it doesn't rule, right, when it's a guest. So today what I want to do is consider something a little bit deeper and more spiritually focused, and give you some thoughts about your horoscopes. We have looked at Saturn in Aries through a number of horoscopes already over the past months. So in some ways, we're just trying to reiterate and keep present in our minds and in our daily meditations the upcoming change that Saturn is about to make. I think that it's effectively like, if you know a sacred teacher or a special person is coming to your house or to your local temple or church, you sort of spruce it up, make sure that it looks nice. And I think that's what we're doing on this channel. We're just making welcome a space within our hearts for, yes, even Saturn. But this begs the question. Sometimes we hear this word evolution, and some months ago, I had a colleague of mine on the show named Ari Moshe Wolf, and he came on and we talked at length about the differences in schools of astrology, the evolutionary school of astrology, which is a more recent modern school in astrology, and ancient Hellenistic astrology being practiced in a modern context today. We kind of discussed different philosophical approaches to the practice. One thing that I think all schools of astrology have typically appreciated as a core philosophical value or spiritual value is the idea that what we are looking at in a birth chart is something of the karmic, this lifetime, the current karmic conditions of the soul, the fate, the destiny of the soul, all sort of interchangeable words in ancient philosophy. So on that level, when we think about the word evolution, typically what comes to our mind is this idea that the soul is here to evolve spiritually through the raw material of a lifetime, and that we can see some of that raw material in a birth chart. And not only that, that each transit that we consider through the birth chart as the life goes on is offering a kind of testimony to where the soul is at in its current evolution. I don't see any discrepancy or I don't see any real difference philosophically between the way ancient astrologers looked at the evolution of the soul, even though they might not have used that particular language, and the way that modern evolutionary astrologers do on just a very basic sort of macro. Okay, sorry about that. Somehow I just disappeared. I accidentally clicked the button on my mouse and I disappeared. So anyway, as I was saying, I don't see a big difference in how modern astrologers in the evolutionary tradition versus say, ancient astrologers looked at the soul. Yes, we're here to learn and grow spiritually through the raw material of our lives. And the planets can be used as a way of mapping out what kinds of themes and topics are likely to be a part of that evolution. Before I go further with giving you some ideas about how Saturn in particular may always be asking us to evolve, which we'll use as prompts for these horoscopes, I want to just take a minute to explore the word evolution. So the etymology of a word is really a way of thinking about its roots historically, where the word comes from and some of its original meanings. Because what happens often is we start taking a word for granted. We use the word regularly, and then we start baking in assumptions that may or may not be very close to the actual roots of the word. I find that refreshing on etymologies helps me connect to the language so that language isn't just dead and functional, but is alive and sort of oracular. When we meditate on words we use frequently, I find that even though some of them, like the words death and rebirth, for example, two of my favorites, quarter jar words, that they can stay alive somehow when I spend time looking at their esoteric roots, their ancient historical roots. So on that note, what does evolution mean etymologically? So it comes from the Latin word evolutio. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means an unrolling or an unfolding, originating from the verb evolvere, which meant to unroll. And what I really liked was almost like there was one little note here that I read in one of the spots online that I was looking at the etymology from. This noun meaning unrolling or unfolding refers to the act of unwinding or unfolding something like a scroll. And I thought, ooh, see, I love etymologies because it connects me to an image like the unfurling or unrolling of a scroll. And for me, when I think about spiritual evolution, I don't just glaze over and find myself surrounded by, a billion crystals in some new age bookstore, just like I'm just glazed over. But I suddenly have a connection to the word now. I think of something being unfolded like a scroll that's being read. Don't you ever get that sense yourself? I certainly do. That as your life is happening and you're going through certain seasons or phases of growth where certain themes become really noticeable, it's as though you're unfolding or unrolling a scroll, a sacred text that has to do with this raw material of a life. The raw material is the means by which you're going to grow and evolve spiritually, the way in which you're going to grow or unfold. It's as though there are these moments when we suddenly are able to read the intended plans or themes for our life. And I don't always feel like I can see that. Like sometimes I'm just in it and I can't zoom out to see, oh, this is the material this chapter of your life is kind of about these themes and these topics. That's why astrology is so useful. It allows us to see something of that script. Astrology, in a sense, is evolutionary insofar as it allows us to sort of unroll the script and look at some of the sacred language that is destined for us. So, on that level, I don't necessarily think that we need to think about evolution in terms of like an ascension through levels, rungs on a ladder, moving upward towards some peak state of enlightenment. I think of it more like a story. There's a story that's been written just for you, just for me. And astrology, in certain moments, allows us to unroll the script and look at that. And with that understanding of the chapter that we are living, I think comes greater ability to co-create within it, we might say, or to just be a more conscious participant. This is why this channel also constantly supports an animistic view, which is a participatory view. Every stage of your life is like an animal that's alive, and how will you tend to it? That's a level of experience or thinking about experience that most of us, we forget to access it because we're so in it. But when we see experience as a kind of spirit that's visiting us, well, then it's that scroll again. We're able to see something. So just a few thoughts on the word evolution. Let's look at 3 questions that Saturn, I think, is always providing us. And then we're going to look at the whole sign house placement here in our charts to give us a clue as to where Saturn might be showing up right now more specifically. So, number 1, I think Saturn is always asking us, where will I mature? How will I grow wiser? Where will I become just a little bit more focused, especially where focus is required for the sake of the story, for the sake of that which is unfolding? I don't believe that focus is some kind of universal value that everyone ought to have and cultivate. We should be as serious and focused as possible in all moments. But Saturn is frequently asking us to become more focused in particular ways at particular times within specific contexts. I don't think that all of the planets ask for the same thing. So some planets will be asking for some things, or might even be competing with other planets in terms of how to move through life. But Saturn frequently asks us, how are you growing wiser, more mature, and where are you becoming a little bit more serious or a little bit more focused because you need to? Okay, now that could be self-care. It could be in terms of being more boundaried in a relationship. It could be in terms of the development or cultivation of your craft if you're a practitioner of some kind. So it looks different, right? Depending on where it lands. That's one of the main reasons we do horoscopes, to get a better idea of where that focus might be taking place. If you think about Saturn, we talked about this yesterday, but if you think about Saturn as a planet who is exalted at the harvest time of the fall equinox, that symbolic space of the solar year from the relative orientation of the northern hemisphere, got to put that in there so we remember this is symbolic, doesn't matter which hemisphere you live in. Then we go to Capricorn and Aquarius. It's 2 home signs where darkness is the greatest, but light starts rising. And in the middle of winter, where light is also steadily rising. We are talking about phases of life that Saturn is associated with, both symbolically in the solar year and literally in the arc of a human lifetime, that have to do with the weight and responsibility of being an adult. That's the Saturn return moment. How will I be an adult is a very important question. It doesn't have to look the same for everybody. Where do I need to be more serious or focused? Where am I building something? Where am I being asked to become more mature, less naive, more realistic? All of these kinds of things kind of imply an arc of seriousness and development that occurs as life goes on, and we're capable of handling more. We're capable of being better boundaried or better disciplined, or we're capable of staying closer to our values and our authentic truth as it lives in our hearts. All of these things, Saturn is really an ally for us on. So this is one question to consider within the horoscopes we're looking at today. The second one is, what limits or realities must I face? As the reality principle, it's not that Saturn is realer than any other planet. It's that there are different realities, many different realities that the planets represent. And the Saturnian reality is that which is necessary, that which can't be avoided or eliminated or repressed. In that way, ironically, Saturn sometimes feels oppressive, or Saturn will show up as repression. But one of the things that is usually behind oppression or repression is something that we have to face and deal with as a kind of confrontation with reality that can't be avoided. In the case of oppressors, it's like, not that I don't love the reality of oppressors any more than anyone else, but when you face oppressive forces in life, you have to square with the fact that reality includes them. And then it becomes about, how does the soul live with or work through the reality of oppressive forces? And what we find in that process is gold. It's the gold of a heart that is eternal, that has to, kind of stand on its dignity and work through something, and only allow for, let's say, oppression to take place in certain ways while fighting to retain that eternal dignity of the heart that can never be taken away from us. That's a valuable lesson that Saturn often brings us. Yes, there's obstacles, there's oppressive forces within yourself or other people, but how do you work with them? How do you move through them? What is the greater reality that you anchor yourself in when things threaten to oppress or depress you, right, in some sphere of material life? The other thing that Saturn brings up within us are just limits. When we come to recognize, well, I fail sometimes, I can't do certain things, something is just not working anymore, or there's disappointment, right? Those kinds of experiences are also essential because they typically involve having to face an uncomfortable or painful truth that someone or something, including ourselves, is limited, is mortal, is impermanent. Life includes suffering. I can't think of anything more meaningful than the process of retaining your belief and your connection to magic, hope, mystery, optimism, while also squaring up and facing these kinds of realities. I think, for example, I've said this many times on the show before, but Thich Nhat Hanh is one of my great role models. I mean, I never met him or anything, but I've read a lot of his books, listened to a lot of his talks. And what I love about him is there's no blinking in the face of the kind of teeth, the existential teeth of reality. He's a good Buddhist in that sense, right? But he is childlike, innocent, magical, wonderful, curious, wide-eyed, starry. There's no lack of any of that, while there's also this very sober kind of gravitas that he has. I think Saturn is gently making each of us into more luminous spiritual beings, where that luminosity doesn't stand in some kind of ignorant rejecting or ignoring of these darker Saturnian limits or realities that are part of embodied existence. So, where do I have to go through Saturn school but the point is, without losing my heart, my magic, my shine, my sparkle, my curiosity? Saturn doesn't want to strip those things from us. Saturn wants to deepen their relevance, to make those things more real. Weirdly, we have to sometimes face these things that feel threatening to the very state of that magic and wonder that we carry inside. That sense of hopefulness, it has to be tested and deepened and made into like a a starry kind of like metal or something. I'm thinking of like lightsabers and mithril from Lord of the Rings, you know? Number 3, where will failure, loss, or obstacles appear as my teachers? And I basically just covered this in number 2. I sort of just went right into this, didn't I? So same idea, right? How do we evolve? How is the story of our life unfolding according to Saturn? It is where we are growing wiser, more focused, more serious, and we're enjoying that process. We're growing up and it feels good to grow up. And it doesn't mean that we have to lose our humor or our playfulness or our magic. Where are we reaching limits or facing those harder aspects of reality with realness? No glossing over it, but that doesn't mean we have to lose any of those childlike, beautiful, starry qualities. And again, where will failure, loss, or obstacles appear as my teachers, as my guides that I learn to trust? Not easy for any of us. It's easy for me to sit here and rattle this off and be like, isn't life great with Saturn? But it's not. Saturn sucks. I'm just kidding. I can say that only because I'm friends with Saturn. Okay. Well, I say I'm friends with Saturn, but Saturn's also like a teacher, all respect, because Saturn could knock me on my ass at any moment. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and go back to let's go to our horoscopes. So what I want you to think about as we go through this reminder of house topics for Saturn is, how will I evolve along the lines that we've just covered? Okay, so these are brief house reminders. If you are, and as I say, listen to your rising sign. That corresponds to the whole sign house version of your birth chart, which is what Hellenistic astrologers like myself utilize in our practice. And so horoscopes are done in whole sign. It makes the most sense to listen to your rising sign if you want the transit location in your whole sign birth chart. If not, listen to your sun, listen to whatever you prefer. It's all good. So Aries, we're talking about the first house. Where will you mature or grow wiser as an individual person who has an individual psychology and character and behavior? How are you being forced to grow wiser, more serious in terms of your self-concept? It's very personal. It's very psychological. It could be even physical and related to things like health and self-care. What kind of feedback are you going to be open to accepting with respect to how you need to learn and grow as a person with a personality? When we go to Taurus, we see Saturn going into the 12th house. One thing that I like about the 12th house is for Saturn is that Saturn rejoices there naturally. When I think about Tauruses as Venus-ruled creatures, it's not, oh, and I'm a Taurus rising, so I know this, it's not always easy to be assertive or more aggressive or standing apart from others because it feels uncomfortable to a Venusian type of personality. Saturn in the 12th might be about, how do you stand alone? How do you stand apart? How do you take a stand for yourself? Sometimes that happens by having to stick up for yourself or having to confront or deal with hostile people or forces, or even looking at unconscious dimensions of yourself that are more aggressive or angry or belligerent or confrontational or mean that you don't necessarily see all the time because it's unconscious. You project a Venus type of vibe, a Venus earthy type of vibe, and yet there might be this hidden part of you. I would say that the exploration of individuality through things like solitude, or even taking time apart, or developing parts of yourself that stand apart from others or that are not as concerned with harmony, could also be a focus. So consider that 12th house as a blind spot or a somewhat unconscious spot where you have to look at things that undermine you, that help or harm you, kind of behind the scenes quietly, and also parts of yourself that need to come forth more or need to be looked at because they are problematic. All right, well, with Geminis, we're moving Saturn into the 11th house. That is the place of friends, allies, the social, communal, organizational facet of public social life. It is a place that also pertains to your aspirations and your long-term goals and dreams. There is a sense with Saturn in Aries in the 11th that you might be coming into a period of time where you have to go it alone, or where your allies will be refined or reduced, and there may be more of a spirit of independence or of blazing your own trail. Maybe that ultimately leads you to new people, new groups, new social connections that are meaningful, but it may start off as having to sort of, take to a trail that's of your own making, and maybe even depart from certain comfortable allies or groups that you've been a part of. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a degree of disillusionment with, or facing various limitations or hard realities with respect to social, professional circles or larger community dynamics that connect you to the larger world out there. So there's work to be done in this area, refinement to that will take place for Geminis. When we go along to Cancers, we see Saturn in the 10th house, which is that public, social, career house. It's also, I always like to try to mention this, but sometimes I forget, but for retirees, it's what connects you to the public world. For people who don't yet have a job, it's what's slowly developing the role or place you will play in the world. So, and then for people who are in, that kind of career vocational space, even if you're a full-time parent, it's the work that you do. It's the practice that you have. And it's the process of trying to establish a name, a reputation, a series of skills that maybe set you apart, that you're known for. So Saturn here suggests a period of great refinement, of greater focus, maturation, sometimes dealing with aspects of yourself publicly, socially, that are in need of greater maturing. Like you have to grow up somehow in your career, or you're going to have more responsibility given to you. And, with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing. This is also about looking at maybe things like power and figures of authority and issues that come up around those dynamics, either within yourself and how you wield power, or those that you work for or under and how you get along with them. These are the kinds of things I would keep my mind open to as a Cancer. Now, for Leos, we're looking at the 9th house. This is the place where we shape and form our beliefs, our understanding of truth on the highest universal levels, or even an understanding of truth that exists within a particular discipline like math or medicine or astrology. So in the pursuit of truth, we have teachers, we have wisdom schools, we have universities, we have religious institutions. This is also a place that refers to the higher laws of the universe and a trickle down to the laws of a society. And so Saturn in this house could be about issues around things like ethics, morality, law, lawfulness, but also about the pursuit of real truth and the process of doubt and skepticism and inquiry. What kinds of teachers, gurus are the best fit? Which of those teachers wield authority and power over a subject in a way that resonates with you versus those that don't? Sometimes there's a process of refinement around who or what we learn from, or how our beliefs are shaping or changing. So that all of that could be a very interesting part of the unfolding that you're experiencing over the next couple of years. Remember that Saturn is going to spend about 2.5 years in the sign of Aries. We covered that yesterday, so I didn't labor that timeline so much today. But anyway, Virgo rising puts Saturn into the 8th house. I'm actually, been thinking a lot about the 8th house because I'm giving a talk at NORWAC on the 8th house this weekend. As I'm making this, you'll be listening to this right prior to me giving a talk at NORWAC about the 8th house. The 8th house, I like to think of as the place of karmic debts. There is a give and take, a kind of reciprocity that exists here. Even if you think of that kind of cheesy Lion King song, The Circle of Life. Everything moves in a circle in this world. One thing eats another thing. One thing needs another thing for its existence. And then it dies and it becomes the source of food or life for another thing. And that cycle of life and death moving endlessly has a give and take to it. And the 8th house really highlights the place of life where we experience that give and take, where I owe things to people because of what they have owed me or given me, either in past lives or this life. So these kinds of karmic dynamics, the give and take, sometimes they give in ways that are really amazing. This house is connected with the assets and resources of other people that can bless our lives, including things like inheritance, or the things that are coming to us when people in the family die and they they give them to us, in their will. But then also, it's about the attachments that I have and the inevitable process of having to relinquish attachments, which is why the eighth house is not only a place of debt, but also death. All of us have an attachment to the body we have to relinquish at some point. Deal about the relinquishment of attachments and the way in which those agreements that we have with other people go through periods of change. It could be something simple like, a rental contract at an apartment, or it could be something deeper like the kinds of emotional bonds and attachments and the give and take of those relationships karmically that are being reviewed or changed or altered. Or we have to look very carefully, if you're a Virgo, at what kinds of dynamics are fair and equal versus those that take or demand too much. So these are, some deep social karmic dynamics that are being looked at, as well as the kind of give and take of what people give versus what you give, things like that. All right, let's continue on to Libra. For Libra, the evolutionary Saturn is moving into your seventh house, the place of love and relationships and interpersonal dynamics. Now, this house was called Kama, as in the Kama Sutra, as in the experience of pleasure. And there's a natural way in which life has to be about pleasure and happiness in existence with other beings. Saturn in this house can suggest that there's a period of time where certain people just aren't going to cut it any longer in terms of what makes you happy. Or you're going to have to look at the shadows of a person that you love, or you're going to have to look at your own shadows as they exist in a relationship because of the valuable mirror that someone else is providing you with. Either way, there's a season of life now where the unfolding of the script and the language in that script are all about relationships and happiness. And where does growth need to take place within them, which can mean evolution within an existing relationship, or in terms of which ones you get into or get out of. And that could be romantic, but also it could pertain to other kinds of interpersonal connections in general. And that could also cover things like sexuality and intimacy and happiness and how it's experienced in any kind of relationship that you're in right now or that you're thinking about getting into. With Scorpio, Saturn goes into the sixth house, which is a place of work, sacrifice, labor, also hardship, and the difficulties that we have to overcome, especially in relation to things like work, career, material security, income, resources. And so if you get sick, naturally it is hard because now you've got an obstacle to overcome just so you can feel well and safe and okay in your body. If you are in school, you have to work really hard and sacrifice and labor a lot and overcome that process that we all have to overcome when we're like apprenticing in order to be able to sustain and support life and make money and get a good job. So the sacrifice, work, and labor is emphasized for Scorpios. This is a time in life where there's going to be a lot of effort, there's going to be a lot of work, and there's going to be a lot of strain in a sense. But can it be sacred? Can it be leading you to a bountiful harvest down the road? Absolutely. Saturn in the sixth house will reward hard work. If you take the time to care for your body, to develop stronger immunity, to be the healthier, happier version of yourself because of the effort you put in, you will be rewarded typically with Saturn in the sixth. I say that as someone born with Saturn in the sixth. But with Aries, the dignity of Saturn is such that, there might be some struggles and the need to persevere and find courage and strength with what you're building, what you're growing, what you're working on, what you're overcoming. So I think about that for Scorpios. Moving on to Sagittarius, Saturn's in the fifth house, a place that is associated with the satisfaction derived from the soul's dharma. This is about connection with other people, creatively, romantically, but it's also about a sense of being in touch with a creative essence that brings you joy and happiness within yourself as well as in relation to others. So that creative level of fulfillment, this is the house that also taps into things like pregnancy, children, and the satisfaction of understand, like, well, let's put it, I don't know if it's satisfaction, but the process of understanding who you are as an essential being for those of us who are parents, and not saying everyone needs to be, but for those of us who are parents, the children provide an incredible mirror for who we really are, because we'll see it reflected in them in certain ways, and they'll provide mirroring for us. And we can get closer to the essence of who we are, that brings joy, that brings happiness, that is creatively fulfilling. Children are an incredible mirror for parents for the sake of the creative dharma of the soul and its creative fulfillment, because in a sense, we have to look at that through the process of raising kids who are our creative products. So much more than a product, obviously, but you get what I mean. So anyway, the level of creative fulfillment, satisfaction, the reward of being in touch with our creative essence, Saturn wants you to really seriously look at this. Look at what's blocking you. Look at what's helping you. Face hard realities, suffer and work to find your creative essence, even if necessary. But you can do that work, and it's going to be creatively fruitful if you take the time to do it. So for Capricorns, we look at the movement of Saturn and Aries in your fourth house, the place of home, family, roots. Things like land and property, your actual living environment, are all things that we can see in this space. The parental history and karma. Again, if you're a parent, parental karma can come up here too. If you have a family karma of your own or of your, your family of origin can be linked to this transit. How are you growing wiser, more mature, more focused with respect to the cultivation of an inner life that's private, the resting sphere of life, the domestic sphere of life? There might be more of a call to develop that if you're someone who's just way too socially wrapped up and identified with work and people. No, come inward. What will bring you inward from Saturn is interesting. Also, what limits or realities do you have to face and work through in order to grow with respect to your history, familial history, ancestral karma? And where will failure, loss, obstacles appear in relation to things like home and family that will also be such a vital part of how you continue learning and growing right now? These are the things that I'm looking at for Capricorns. For Aquarians, we see Saturn in the third place, a place that's associated with siblings, but a place that I love the way Indian astrologers look at the third house. I think alongside of the Hellenistic understanding, I feel like I've really filled out my the way that I look at and understand the third house myself. One of the ways that we look at the third house is obviously in relation to things like siblings or peers, but there was also this kind of competitive nature to the third house in relation to peers or siblings that Indian astrologers have been very clear about. And I like that, because something about Saturn in the third house can show up as, how are you getting along with people that are sort of like your siblings or your peers? And there could be some need to learn how to stand apart or how to better integrate or harmonize. Either of that dichotomy could show up strongly with Saturn in the third, especially for Aquarians who are often working with that tension between standing apart and being a part of something. So I could see that happening with respect to people who are sort of your equals or peers. Do you need to, let go of the constant urge to always be different or apart or other? Or do you need to work on, caring too much about popularity? In either direction, we could see something here. I also like this house as a place where we develop skills and intellect, a kind of street smarts, capacities within ourselves, both psychologically and maybe materially, that contribute to being liked and having a good, positive social experience in life. But it's also based on some level in the third house on the merit of the skills and abilities that we cultivate, the intelligence we develop. So the Saturn in the third house could reflect a refinement or a deepening of your skills, intelligence, abilities, even psychologically. How you get along with other people might be something that you're looking at. Now, when we move on to Saturn in the second for Pisces, our final sign, we're looking at a place that is truly about the development of material security, comfort, ease, prosperity. And it's about being resourced not just financially and materially, but being resourced in terms of the things that can help provide that material security for us. And then moving up from security, enjoyment. Saturn in this house could put you in touch with a lot of hard work that needs to be done, it's like plowing, tilling, gardening, working. Saturn in the second has, I think, a very productive quality behind it if we do the work and if we're very content to play the long game and see the long-term process that is being cultivated. The cultivation of resources, the cultivation of business products or abilities or skills that contribute to money or wealth or resources. Sometimes with Saturn in the second, it takes time. We have to weed things out that aren't working. We might even go through a period where we feel like we're a little limited, or we're dealing with the fear of deprivation, or the fear of privation, like we're not going to have enough. But in my experience, that Saturn's meaningful challenge is like, keep working, take a long view. The narrowing or limiting feeling that you're dealing with is not going to be there forever. But it is asking for a different kind of focus, or a different attention to detail, or a different set of skills that is maybe needing to be developed or deepened somehow. But looking at the slow, gradual, mature facing of challenges and developing of new resources, and the focus in that house for Pisces, I think for me, it's like, at least it's out of your first house. The first house is like so much more, I don't know, it's just like, it's weightier. I think Saturn in the first is a lot heavier most of the time than what people experience with it in the second, where there's more of a sense of it's something you're working with than something that's working on you. So anyway, that's maybe subjective, but yeah, take it for what it's worth. So I will end today's talk there. After I sign off, there is an informational video all about the first year program, so you can learn more about that. I will take you through everything the program includes in this video and take you over to the class website, show you how it works. Can't wait to study with a new group of people starting on June 22nd. So check this out, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology that begins at the end of June. June 22nd is our starting date. I'm going to take you over to the course page to tell you more about the program and what you will learn while you are in it. So here we go over to the Nightlight Astrology website. You can find this at nightlightastrology.com. Click on the courses tab, go to the first year course. Now, this program is ideal for people who maybe have a little bit of background already in astrology. Maybe you've done some studying on your own independently, taken some courses or webinars and workshops, but you're looking to deepen your understanding of astrology. And maybe Hellenistic astrology in particular has been calling to you. I'll tell you more about what Hellenistic astrology is in a minute, but on the first year course page, you're going to find everything that the course includes. I want to make the structure of the course clear first, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you 5 reasons that I think anyone might have for studying astrology, and you can see if you check any of those boxes. First of all, there are 30 classes on the year. It's just a little under a year-long program with 30 webinars. Every webinar is 2 to 3 hours long, including a lively Q&A and conversational section after we finished our lesson for the day. Each of those lessons I lead personally through live webinars, so you can attend those live. If you want to follow along at your own pace in your own time on your own schedule, you can always look at the recordings and take those in. And I'm going to show you what the class page looks like so you can see how you can interact with the course as uniquely and creatively as you want to. But you can either attend the live webinars or listen to the recordings, or audio or video. In between major units of study within those 30 classes, we have separate classes outside of the 30 classes that are essentially tutoring sessions led by our staff, our course directors. We have 3 of them for our first year program, 3 tutors that help me guide every single class you're in and lead study sessions, and are also staffing an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions, look at charts, practice what you're learning with all of your classmates and with tutors there to help you. They'll always answer questions within a business day. So it's a really well-staffed, well-structured program. In between those major units of study and the breakout sessions, we also have guest speakers that come in throughout the year that you get free access to. The recordings are archived for you in your class folders. So you're getting people within our curriculum. And you're also getting to visit with some astrologers who are outside of the Nightlight School, but we really admire their work, and so we bring them in. you also have a ton of bonus material. With every lesson, we have recommended quizzes, study guides, optional reading. And that allows people who are really, really, intense, deep, like studious types to go as far as you want to with the material, while other people who are maybe, content to take things in at, just kind of taking in the classes, that's there for you too. So you can kind of go as deeply as you want to. The class, if as the year goes on, goes through major units of study in ancient Hellenistic astrology. So if you're not familiar with ancient Hellenistic astrology, this is the earliest form of horoscopic astrology. This is where the astrology that you've probably learned today comes from originally. And that makes some of its features unique. Like, for example, ancient astrologers utilized whole sign houses. We study why they used whole sign houses, how they used them, and we study the why behind really everything: houses, signs, planets, aspects, dignities, essential and accidental dignities, delineation approaches. How do you read and predict within a natal chart? All of those theoretical areas of astrology, we not only learn how to do, but we learn the why behind it. And this is what I think people find most empowering about the course, is that ancient astrology really helps to give you the rationale for everything so that you have the insight available to go off script. What I mean by that is, like, let's say you're learning about a sign, Aries or Taurus or a Gemini, something like that. Ancient astrology won't just give you a list of the adjectives or keywords or descriptions of, say, a sign or a planet. It will give you an underlying philosophical explanation that then allows you to extrapolate from it the kinds of lists that you read in textbooks, which means you'll have an understanding of why everything on a list in a textbook is there in the first place. And you'll also have the insight and creativity available to add things to the list that are a part of your own unique intuition and contribution to astrology. And this is what ancient astrologers wanted students of astrology to learn: the why behind everything. So this is a class where, even though you're seeing things like planet signs, houses, dignities, aspects, and you're like, oh, I've already learned about those things. Not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology. I don't mean to sound condescending, but like, truly, most people's experience coming through this program is, wow, I had no idea all that I didn't know about the roots of everything that I've understood thus far about astrology. So it really is about digging into the philosophical core of why we do everything. And then you have greater intuitive and creative capacity as an astrological craftsman or craftswoman. So anyway, that's a brief explanation of why I think Hellenistic astrology is important. Not to mention that ancient astrology was really focused on our ability to accurately describe and predict things in the realm of karma, fate, and destiny, whereas modern astrology's hallmark and strength is psychological depth. And so when you put the two together in our program, which is why it's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, I think you have something really special. So on that note, you can see everything that we cover here. So there's a video with some of our alumni you can watch. Everything is there on the page. Now, there are 5 reasons that I want to touch on briefly before I tell you about your payment options and need-based tuition. These are 5 reasons to study astrology that, if you mark any of these boxes, especially if you mark several of them, then I think it's a good indication that you might be ideal for this program, might be an ideal fit. So the first one is, if you find that astrology has become a part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly spiritual practice, it is a part of how you lead an inner life, then there is nothing more empowering than deepening your connection to that language, because that puts you more in the driver's seat. It's always good to have astrologers that you rely on, teachers that you listen to, get a little objective perspective, especially when you're looking at your own chart through a reading. But there's really nothing more empowering than learning to speak the language at a deeper level for yourself. And if that calls to you, if you want to understand things and be able to speak more confidently and clearly about this sacred language that you love, and this is a great reason to take a structured program. Number 2 is that you feel called to read charts for people. And look, not everyone who takes our programs is on a professional track, but we have 4 years worth of professional training programs at Nightlight that will prepare you to read professionally for others, if that's the path that you're on. Maybe you don't even know if you're on that path. That's fine too. Many people take our programs just for the sake of their own personal enrichment, and again, to be kind of more in the driver's seat with respect to your astrological journey. You have more of an understanding. You can be more confident in reading symbols and experiencing transits with your own understanding that you've cultivated. But sometimes people want to read for other people. This will definitely set you up to do that. We have a certification track where you can take exams at the end of every year. They're optional. You don't have to if you're not on that level of interest. Number 3, you have done a lot of self-study. You've heard things from here and there, but you're looking to bring it all together. It is overwhelming to study astrology on your own. So if you want organization, structure, and coherence, what you're getting in this program is going on 15 years of training astrologers, 15 years of developing curriculum that has in mind the overwhelm that many people experience. And this program is structured year 1, year 2, year 3, however far you want to go with our curriculum, to give you an organized, structured, coherent way of understanding the history and language of astrology from both ancient times to modern times in all of the vastness that the field includes. And also, as we go, we want to give you the confidence that you are a part now of an astrological lineage. Astrology has always been practitioner-based. Coming through Nightlight, you are going to have the opportunity to feel aligned with a lineage. If you like my work, if you feel aligned with the way I speak the language, then this might be a good reason to come study with us. Now, if you're seeking the why behind things, if you're like, yeah, that's interesting, I get it, I understand, but why? Why signs? What's the difference between a sign and a house? Why do they ever come up with a sign and a house? What's the distinction philosophically? Why does Mars represent this? Why does Mars in this sign represent that? If you are someone who feels empowered by understanding the why behind things, you are going to love this program, because that's how I am as a teacher. That's how I am as a person. And that's what this program is really all about. Number 5, you are looking for astrological community. Look, I think Nightlight is unique in terms of the kind of warmth, acceptance, safety, and inclusiveness that our community includes intellectually, spiritually. We really pride ourselves on being a peaceful kind of family. I'm a Cancer, right? So it's kind of a family-oriented environment. So anyway, I will end it there. If you check any of those boxes, you may want to consider studying with us. Now, I'm going to take you over to 2 things. I want to show you the dashboard. So here is the Thinkific page. You're going to join this, and on your dashboard, you're going to find any courses that you've enrolled in at Nightlight, and there are many, so you may end up in being involved in multiple courses, and you'll find that they're all there on your dashboard. Click on one of them, and it will take you in. You're going to find that on the left-hand side, there's orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar, all the technical stuff you need to know when you join the course. And then you're going to find that when you go through the lessons, that the lesson includes the video, the audio, the slides, the transcripts, the Q&A box text if you couldn't make it live and see what people were talking about, flashcards, homework, a bonus PDF with all sorts of additional recommended reading, bonus videos, additional video links for bonus material. So every single time that you want to visit something within the course, everything is nicely organized. So you can see here, I'm going to pause this before it starts going, but you can embed the video right there. It's embedded and you can watch it. And then if you wanted to, you could also, right here, you could also download the video and watch it on your own device. And that's same for the audio as well. And then as you go, you'll see all of the lessons are laid out. The study sessions are also recorded if you can't make those live. So everything is nicely arranged on the website for you. And that makes it a course that if you wanted to take 3 years to accomplish, you could take 3 years to accomplish. If you want to take it for the sake of getting certified, you have the full year plus an additional year to take the exam. So, 2 years total that we give people if you're on a professional track. But most people complete the program in a year. And a lot of people, over 50% of our students, go on to our year 2 and then our year 3 and horary programs as well. Now, final thing I'm going to show you is right here. You're going to find here is the enrollment options at the bottom of the first year course page. Again, this is at nightlightastrology.com, and you're going to click on the first year course, go to the bottom. The early bird payment saves you several $100s off the cost of the course. That's available till May 15th. Early bird installment plan saves you on the installment plan, regular cost of the course. That's also only available until May 15th. And then need-based tuition. All of our programs include a need-based option where we give you a sliding scale and we say, you pick your monthly tuition number within this sliding scale, which is greatly reduced off the normal tuition price. That is for people who are on a fixed or limited income, receiving disabilities, single mom, whatever the case might be. We want to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying astrology. So you don't have to feel any shame. If that is you, if you need help, If you want to take this, but you need to make it work within a tight budget, we get it. Times are tough right now. We don't think people should be priced out of studying a sacred subject like astrology. So we've been offering need-based pricing for 15 years. Nightlight is a donation-based school. It started that way. We have a sliding scale, so it's kind of like donation. You get to choose your rate anyhow. So if that's something that will help you, please use it. Thank you for listening to this. I hope it gave you a really deep and comprehensive introduction to what the course is all about and why you might find it exciting to come study with us starting at the end of June. So any questions you have about the program as you're visiting the course, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. We'll be glad to talk about anything that you have questions about. We are here and we have a wonderful staff of people at Nightlight who will be a part of your learning experience and are all glad to help you. All right, that's it. We'll see you again later. Bye.